You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you today on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs have wound down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, never worry, because FanDuel is still hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every day. That's right. Daily, something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again, my man, kicking off another week, and not just any week, because July 1st has finally arrived. And today we're celebrating 3 stripes in the 806, 3 numbers, 806, 3 letters, LBK. 2 T's and a double T. Okay, maybe I should just stop there before I get too far off into the weeds. But it's basically Adidas Day in the 806 as we make an official transition into a new apparel partnership. I want to get to a couple of different things as far as that is concerned with you today on the program, sort of how it came to be, maybe who the biggest payoff is actually there for, and in what way across various sports programs. And I think we'll mention the name Patrick Mahomes on today's program as well. But a long time coming and a big deal for Texas Tech athletics.
Yeah, you mentioned the 3. Yeah, I mean 3 letters PAT. That's not point after touchdown. I mean, Pat Mahomes for sure. This is long since been rumored and discussed. It is amazing how much the fan base has cared about your quote unquote apparel deal all throughout the years, really, and how much, I guess, frustration there was with Under Armour from the fan base in recent years. But I think, trying to create some leverage for yourself and trying to create a better deal for yourself, if you're Texas Tech, in the last 3 to 5 years, and then it all kind of culminated when last year for the Oregon game, you had representatives from all the pertinent parties there on campus and at your game and all those things. But yeah, obviously the Adidas deal, has been agreed to and all that. It becomes official today or at midnight last night, maybe something along those lines. But I know everybody involved really thrilled to now be on the other side of it. This is one of those things where it's just kind of like this, this thing, because in that world, fans may go buy stuff or are interested from afar, but when you're in that world and you're a coach or a player for one of these programs, you really live in this gear. You really do. I think that I would say Joey McGuire probably is wearing Under Armour 365 out of 365. And yeah, maybe some night he's wearing a coat and tie, but I guarantee you earlier that day he had on Under Armour this or that, or a Texas Tech, whatever it was. And you don't have anything that's Texas Tech without that U of A on it. And now that will all become Adidas, just overnight situation. And I know that they're all thrilled to now be able to talk about it, recruit to it, be about it. They've had stuff being shipped in that's been sitting there in boxes since, I guess, April, maybe, give or take. And it's just kind of, because you have to order way ahead of time. That's just kind of how this calendar works. When you need stuff for football, you got to order it last fall kind of deal. That's why that agreement was essentially agreed to and signed off on, what was it, last September, October-ish. And then you get down to it. And, Joey, even on one of his coaches' shows, kind of mentioned briefly, because he didn't want to give too many things away. Like, yeah, we had a meeting about uniforms, and design. And we sat through a presentation today from the folks that explained to us why the stripes are the way that they are and how that they wanted to design these angles on this jersey, and on it went. So that's why, so much of this has to be done, ahead of time. But now, yeah, it's finally here. Now the rebranding, now the social media, now and the way I expect today to kind of unfold, depending on when you're watching this, it could change. But my understanding would be that Adidas would kind of have the first run at this stuff, like, and be able to present their pre-produced content, possibly involving Pat Mahomes in the morning, and then Tech would get to carry the baton in the afternoon with a lot of their pre-produced content involving a lot of their athletes, coaches, facilities, and all those things, because signage has already kind of started to change. Because it's not just what you're wearing on a shirt. I mean, this logo and this Adidas situation will be really in your face at all venues.
Everywhere,
yeah, everywhere, and that's what everybody wants. That's what, and I think Texas Tech is going to be ready to really parade that and be proud of it, and namely because of Pat Mahomes' involvement. There's a lot of synergy here, and I think that's the most important word. Because I don't know who benefits the most, but we'll probably talk about that here in a little bit.
Yeah, I do want to get to that, kind of how it's spread out across the athletics department and maybe what area it's the biggest deal in. And it may not be the one you're actually anticipating as a fan, though we're excited for the chance for you to get new socks as well out there, wherever you may be. Chris, I do kind of wonder, the thought of this being a long time coming, what your feel is for the actual timeline of when maybe conversations turned from wish list to actually substantive that this could happen. And I know that a lot of it has to do with the ascension, obviously, of Patrick Mahomes and the weight that he could throw around in these conversations when he becomes a multi-time MVP and Super Bowl winner and best football thing going on planet Earth kind of thing. It didn't start out that way, but it's become that kind of status for Patrick Mahomes. So really, what do you think as far as kind of turning from we're considering a new deal and we got these options and yada, 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 to actually being like, man, it's sort of becoming Adidas or bust, I guess, and how Patrick was involved in that?
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think Texas Tech was, the last time that they re-upped with Under Armour, which I think was an extension. This was something that they were trying. They wanted, you want leverage because you can't get a better deal if you don't have anybody else interested. And Nike was just, as much as fans may have wanted it or going, what are we doing? Why do we want? They don't need the representation. If you look at around you, Nike has so many of the schools around you, so they don't need more, and their company has been doing okay, but it's not, they have not, Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU. I mean, you keep going. I think SMU, Texas, those are all Nike schools. So you don't necessarily need, and so unlikely to have them as a legitimate player. And I think you were trying to create some interest in Adidas and Nike if they would have been interested. But I just think the timing kind of really fell in your favor. In some ways, you just got lucky, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, we won't apologize for it.
No, and the fact that, because here's what you have. You could have had a Super Bowl quarterback that played at your school that signed with one of these apparel companies that would have been indifferent to his alma mater. There's plenty of those out there that just kind of move on. They're all about themselves or business or not really worried about that. And that's why you just got lucky, because not only did all those other things happen where he's the face of the league, the biggest sports league that there is, and he's the face of it, and he's got all the rings to prove it. He has a very keen interest in what happens at Texas Tech and was directly involved. And I think basically saying, no, here's what I want to happen, head folks at Adidas. And, Kirby's got to do what's best for the institution. But I think part of the lines of communication when you have to call Kevin Plank and say, hey, because they had the right to match. Under Armour had the right to match this. I think you could put some poison pills and some different things in there for your Adidas, knowing, okay, Under Armour's not going to match this. We're going to put it, but Under Armour could have if they wanted to. And I think that part of the lines of conversation was, Kirby, do you want us to match? And I think Kirby has to go, no, I don't. I've got this situation with Patrick Mahomes. There's just too much going for this other situation, and that's what's best for us. There's a reason that Ludwig Oberg signed with Adidas. Pat Mahomes was in some ways involved with that too. And I just think it's all kind of pointing that way. I think you'll have some lead athletes on some of these teams that are, I guess maybe the term is like a brand ambassador, that they'll be treated a bit differently than others. I don't know how many of these teams it'll be like that, but I think some of these teams and some athletes will get, I think that you will look to the professional, like does this, spill into like a Josh Young? Does this spill into any of your NBA guys, like a JT Toppin in the future or something, where you gotta go, hey, sink your hooks into them. That's part of the Red Raider family. Adidas needs to take care of it. I mean, so this has got some far-reaching things associated with it. But bottom line, coaches and players will get more stuff. They will have, and that's what Adidas is providing. I think the argument with Under Armour is, okay, we're not getting as much gear as maybe some of our competition is, or some of the other schools are. And does that really play a factor in recruiting or what? I don't know. Probably, yeah, to some extent, and maybe more important to some than others. But this is a massive improvement on what you'll get, and you're going to get money on top of it.
Yeah,
that's why this is just like a no-brainer. And you've got somebody in the boardroom that, as long as he's winning, he can go, guys, you're not getting shipments out on time, or guys, I don't like the way this looks, fix it. And they're all going to go, yes, sir, Mr. Mahomes. What else do you need, sir? I mean, what we're so sorry. I mean, you're just very fortunate. And I think Ludwig is kind of going to be in that way too. He just lit the tour up early on. He's just
on the
getting
cusp,
started.
right?
That's what I'm saying. And so there's just a lot of synergy here.
Yeah, I think we saw a couple of these maybe that are possible brand ambassador type athletes. There was a Lady Raider that was making some social media posts. I think Micah Hudson made a social media post referencing a 3-stripe life, just as some examples of what we've seen so far. And I was curious, what or what you think about the prominence of Patrick Mahomes' specific brand under the Adidas umbrella being a part of this, because you actually sent me a picture just a few days ago of some branding, I think, in the football facility. Just something very simple, a little background or something like that, that just in as large of type or font or size as the Adidas logo, you had Patrick Mahomes' logo there mirroring that. So do you think that could be kind of tech specific, that his brand would be a big part of this? First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And summertime means baseball, burgers, and money in the bank when you get to picking winners with FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $200 you can use to cool off and beat the heat with a refreshing parlay. An over-under play, or by getting the money line mojo going. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make a splash by adding a big win to your summer bucket list with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's because you actually sent me a picture just a few days ago of some branding, I think, in the football facility. Just something very simple, a little background or something like that, that just in as large of type or font or size as the Adidas logo, you had Patrick Mahomes' logo there mirroring that. So do you think that could be kind of tech specific, that his brand would be a big part of this?
Well, yes and no. It will be tech specific, but I think it will extend to some of the athletes maybe that you go forward with, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
I don't want to say they're trying to recreate the Jordan brand or anything like that. I think it's a bit different in what they've tried to do with that and Nike and everything, but there's some similarities there. But Texas Tech, I think specifically initially, and I say initially, I don't know if you'll get like a Mahomes branded uniform in year one. I do think that is in year two. I think, don't hold me to this, I think that is in year two just because of the timing. Sure. And you want to make it right and all those things. But I think initially soccer and football will get Mahomes branded uniforms. And you're saying soccer? Well, that's what Brittany Mahomes is. That's what she played in college at Tyler Junior College, and that her and Pat own the part of the soccer team in Kansas City, and that was something that she wanted, and happy wife, happy life. And so Pat's like, hey, what do you want out of this deal? And she's like, well, that's what. so Tom Stone's team will benefit as well with a separate uniform, or I don't know if that will be the way that all our uniforms are branded. I think that from a football standpoint, I do think you're going to get a red version, a black version, and a white version of these uniforms. And I don't know what all they're going to show you. I have a feeling that some of the release today, and they've been very careful with how they have protected the video game release, because I think some of their new stuff may be in the video game. I don't know if Pat will be involved with some of that release as it relates to the video game or just in general, but he will be involved. But I think you'll get a separate Pat Mahomes uniform, I think, in year two. I think that's right. So if I'm wrong there, somebody can correct me, and I guess we'll all see it for ourselves. And it's something that I think he has designed. I think Joey would even tell you, hey, fan base, if you don't like it, take it up with Pat. I had nothing to do with it, kind of deal. I mean, obviously – Pat will get he will get player, hey, do you like this? Do you like that? What do you think? But collaboration, if you will. But that's kind of the gist. And then the basketball shoe is also like a high profile item, if you will. I think you've got some NBA guys that are signed with Adidas. I don't think this is actually going to happen. But Rayford Young, former Tech player, was trying to get Trae Young in an Adidas kind of thing and kind of funnel it that way with the Tech connection of dad playing for, Coach Dickey and all that years and years ago. But Anthony Edwards, I'm trying to remember, is it Donovan Mitchell? There's some NBA guys that have their Adidas shoes. So I think you'll have, because it used to be, it was just really Under Armour or Steph Curry type stuff. And now, because that's a big deal in the basketball recruiting game and all that. But the Adidas basketball circuit is huge. But yeah, so that's, I've kind of waxed poetic enough there. Sorry, but.
Well, that's really what I wanted to get to eventually, was a question of whether or not the actual biggest felt impact as to how a program can use this to their advantage at their disposal. I know everybody's going to like a revamp from a football uniform standpoint. I don't know if football recruits care quite as much about what shoe they're wearing or what logo is on their jersey. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I know for a fact it seems to really play heavily in basketball circles. And I'm wondering if it's kind of underrated or underreported, the impact that this would have on a men's basketball program, potentially the women's the same way. I don't really know. But certainly, like you're talking about there, the Adidas basketball circle is large. And I really wonder if Grant McCaslin and his crew may be in for the biggest payoff of all, as far as where they're coming from. Under Armour basketball, which I don't know, is like in the same, is like a Skechers basketball universe or something. Shout out to Skechers, all due respect, boys. We're keeping it respectful here. But you get the idea. The difference in going from that to this, I think from a men's basketball standpoint, maybe like the biggest leap of anyone. Am I overstating it or exaggerating it, or how do you see that part of it?
Yeah, Under Armour is just not much of a player in the basketball space. I think, they got Steph Curry on board years ago. He was the kind of a face of the league there for a while. They haven't really done much with other players and things like that. But just generally speaking, Under Armour just not a big player in the sport of basketball. Adidas very much is. Nike still, I think, kind of controls that for the most part, but Adidas is clearly right there. It's not, I'm talking universally.
Right.
And I think Kellen Buffington has done a lot of work with the Adidas folks over the years with a lot of what he was doing from the AAU standpoint and the Metroplex and all that. He knows a lot of people. I think he was very much looking forward to, working with Adidas. I think he felt like this would be a huge benefit to you as a program. And it does matter. I mean, if guys have been playing on the Adidas circuit, you just become familiar with it. There's some relationships with the people involved and the product in general and all that. I don't know if we really know how much of an impact this will be because it still comes back to where you live, who's coaching you, NIL right. and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I do think that it certainly is a arrow pointing up. It's certainly not, this will only help basketball, not hurt it on the men's and women's side for sure.
Yeah, no question. Just kind of wild to think about. Just add this to the list of things that maybe you didn't anticipate when you became a sports fan and then thought, hey, I want to become a sports broadcaster or cover sports. Apparel contracts, media rights contracts, private equity conversations. You knew this would all be a part of covering sports, right, Chris, as a young, wide-eyed Chris Level? It's crazy where we've come from.
The business of college athletics is so well reported on that it's kind of like recruiting has always been. I think that recruiting started getting reported on really heavily in the early 2000s, and it still is. But prior to that, yeah, okay. But I think that it was reported on so much, fans were made to feel like you need to care about this, and they do in droves, which is the reason why a site like RedRaidersports.com has been around for so many years, and there's so many people on there because you're following. That was its original intent. Now it's just a great community, and you talk about stuff like all the things that we're talking about now that you just brought up. But I think that the business of, because when I was doing radio every day, I'm like, why do I care how much revenue your school is getting per year? I don't get any of that money, but it's the competitor in you. It's a competition, this league versus that one, and you're kind of made to feel like you need to care. If you're wanting to rep your school, and so I think this is part of that. I think you'll be well branded, well represented, very public with this Adidas stuff, and I think that is going to give a lot of folks a source of pride. I think the biggest, who I think the biggest benefactor is in this deal, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this.
Well, Adidas, of course, having Texas Tech on their roster, obviously they're the biggest benefactor right there.
Corporate-wise, absolutely, yes. Kevin Plank and a Under Armour, probably not so much.
That's right.
But I think this is a massive win for Kirby Hocutt because Kirby has really gone out of his way to work on and establish a quality relationship with Pat. I think that anytime you need something, like the Tech needs something from Pat, Kirby's the one that deals with Pat. Hey, I'm coming in for a game. Kirby's the one that deals with it. So I just think their relationship here is ultimately what paid huge dividends. It makes a lot of sense when you fast forward here. If you want to, we're talking about this deal being done. If you want to look back on the Ring of Honor ceremony a couple of years ago, there's just lots of reasons and smart decisions made that I think led to this, and it really involves Pat and Kirby. If you want my honest opinion, I think that those guys can feel like, man, I did something really good here, because ultimately Texas Tech is the one that will benefit, not just because you've got more stuff, you get more money, you've enhanced your situation, but I think you're better represented, and I think there's a confidence that, boy, there's some serious trust here. Like, if we have any problem, we being Texas Tech, any problem with anything at Adidas, you know exactly who you can call. And you probably don't want to bother him with that. But, I mean, you just got the ultimate ace in the hole. I mean, you do. The only
Pat,
other,
can you get down to the warehouse and check on this shipment, man? Who else is calling up a league MVP to make sure deadlines are being met?
that's right. I mean, and the only
wild.
other, the biggest, the one bigger name that Adidas has signed, and he is bigger than Pat. I hate to break this to people, but worldwide Q rating, he's going to beat Pat by quite a bit here, and it's not a fair fight just because this is a worldwide sport. But Messi, Lionel Messi is an Adidas guy too, and that he's going to be in a lot of these commercials, and but yeah, that's maybe the lead. Whereas maybe Lionel Messi is 1, Pat's 1A as far as Adidas reps, if you will. But that you're talking top of the food chain there. When you're talking about Pat Mahomes and then Messi too. But anyway, it's just because if Pat or Messi call up to headquarters and say, this is what I need, they're going to get whatever they want, and rightfully so. Yeah,
man, I'm just thinking about where we have come from and wondering if you even have any memories of previous eras, if you even had a reason to have a memory. I remember there was like the Lady Raiders had like a Nike deal. Adidas was a basketball uniform provider during the Bob Knight era, I know, for a spell. Texas Tech football had like the big time jerseys that had the singular wireless man little logo back during the early Leach years. There were some Nike years.
That was game time.
Game time.
That's what it was.
It was such a different era. I mean, there was no probably some out there maybe, but there was no, I don't think athletics department wide branding deal. And I mean, that was just a foreign thought. Do you even remember conversations taking place about those things, or was it just so routine that nobody even really talked about it?
You were just kind of trying to find your way back at that time frame. I think this was all still somewhat new. You were semi-successful with your programs, but just kind of they're West Texas. It's just kind of not a, and then this whole industry kind of blew up. And I think the Under Armour deal, when it happened, was a big, big deal at the time. Yeah. It was a big, big deal. And they've been a great partner of yours for years. And if not for them, you in many ways, you would have been hosed. But Adidas is a huge upgrade. And I don't say the word huge lightly. I think that it just very much is. I think, what Under Armour could just never get right, just could never get this part fixed. Their shoes. If you've ever worn Under Armour shoes, tennis shoes, I mean, I'm talking initially in the Under Armour deal, their cleats were it was such a new thing for them that turf would get so hot that literally the sole the glue would melt on that turf. And I remember you had some of your equipment folks, Zane Perry being one of them, would request that Under Armour reps be there for games to see it happen firsthand, to where you could literally peel the bottom cleats off of these shoes because the glue had just melted. And it just, I mean, it got better, but it's just not the same product that what Nike and Adidas puts out, from a everyday running tennis shoe to basketball shoe to cleats and all those things. This is what these people do. And they've been doing it for years and years and years. Yeah. Remember, Michael Jordan, back in the day, Adidas is where he wanted to go. And it took this whole crazy Jordan thing and Nike, and now they've got a movie after it and all that, to change his mind and revolutionize the way it was all done. But he was always focused on Adidas there with those Germans. So Adidas has been around a long, long time. They know what they're doing. It's more of a worldwide company. Soccer they're heavily involved with, and all those things. But there you go.
Learned a whole lot on the program today, including happy wife, happy life, happy Tom Stone. That's a new saying, I think, here in West Texas. But man, shout out to Patrick Mahomes for doing this right. And we're hoping that the Lord's taking a liking to him as a result of that and many other things. But I would love to hear from you and your reaction out there to the news that'll be coming across today. Depending upon when you're listening to this, you may have already digested some of the announcements and the marketing efforts and things like that, but should be really exciting as far as the time for Texas Tech athletics.
The one thing I'll tell you uniform-wise, that here's a little Easter egg for you. I think you'll have a black helmet and a white helmet. but that's it. I don't think you're going to get red anymore.
Okay.
So
well,
that was So I'll leave that with you there.
Like the Under Armour shoes, the red helmet just hadn't been quite right up to this point in time. So maybe back to the lab for a little more tinkering, but a whole lot to digest out of what we have discussed here today and the announcements that are coming forth from Texas Tech and Adidas. So good insights and perspectives as always, Chris. Appreciate your time, man. We'll see you for the next round on the other side.
Absolutely. Have a good Monday, people. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for joining us, and get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss a thing. And of course, the best way to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. So thanks to those that do that. And thanks to all of you for being out there. We hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.